What's going on, TIW Mafia? I got something special. We're doing like a Chikara month here, and this isn't Chikara related, but it's comic book related and it's wrestling related. So it ties in. I'm here with Matt Entin. Matt, did I say your last name right, first of all?
Yeah, just it's pronounced as it looks.
Okay. Now, can you tell us a little bit about where you guys came up with the concept for Invasion of Wrestletopia?
So, it's sort of been knocking around in one form or another for about 10 years. Ed and I actually wrote it as a screenplay first about a decade ago. And it's gone through sort of various forms, and then it started sort of gnawing at us after a while. And about a little over a year ago, Ed was like, we really sort of need to get this out to the world in some fashion, and the best vessel for this, only one we can afford to produce, is a comic book. So it's interesting to see sort of like how things have changed from when it was a screenplay to a comic series. But it's interesting how little has changed. I'd say like so many of like the major beats that we first sort of came up with 10 years ago are still in there.
No. What came first for you guys? I mean, obviously you're wrestling fans, and I know it was written as a screenplay originally, but you're obviously comic book fans too.
Yeah.
What came first?
Well, I was a wrestling fan before I was a comic book fan. I'm a child of the 80s. So, we're talking, WWF was huge. And
Yeah.
I think my entree into wrestling was probably through Hulk Hogan's Rock and Wrestling Saturday morning cartoon.
I kind of saw that with the name of the federation in there. Very much reminded me of that.
Yeah. And then, but I grew up in a house without cable. We didn't get cable until I was probably like end of junior high, so I was probably 12 or 13. So I got tantalizing sort of tastes of wrestling through like Saturday night's Main Event, and whenever the WWF was featured on network television. But then, when we finally got cable, of course, the Attitude Era was sort of just getting revved up, and I got hooked, and I've been hooked ever since. Although I will say, I'm not as avid a watcher as I once was, but I still read daily about what's going on in the industry, and of course, like any documentary WWE comes out with, I'll watch. And then now, of course, Vice has Dark Side of the Ring, and I'm watching that religiously every week.
I haven't. The only one I've missed so far is the Von Erichs.
Oh yeah,
and I've watched about half of it.
Yeah, that was a good one. And actually, tonight I think is the premiere of the Gino Hernandez episode.
Yeah, they had me hooked with doing the Bruiser Brody thing.
Oh yeah. It's just interesting that no one has produced a documentary about that.
Right? No one. There's a lot of conspiracy theories around that.
Yeah.
So a wrestling fan from the 80s, and then now Wrestletopia is not your first writing experience, right?
No, so Ed and I actually met. Our day jobs are as video game writers. We were both freelance video game writers, and we actually met at both of our first jobs, which in the video game industry, we were working on a game called Leisure Suit Larry Magna Cum Laude. You sound
I'm a child of the 80s as well. And let me tell you, I had the cheat sheet to answer the questions to the first Leisure Suit Larry quiz. The original Leisure Suit Larry had a quiz you had to take in the beginning to prove you were over 18 to play the game, and I cheated my ass off.
They were all like questions about Watergate and All in the Family, and just like anything late 60s, early 70s. Yeah, so that was the first. So Ed and I got hired. Ed transitioned from being a producer to being a writer, and I just got hired as a writer straight out of college to write the Leisure Suit Larry. Basically, got brought back after a few years, and it got revived for Xbox and PlayStation 2 and PC. And we both just happened to luck out. That was my first job out of college.
I supported you guys on that one. I actually bought that, I believe, for the PlayStation 2 because I was an old school Leisure Suit Larry fan.
Yeah, the gameplay left a little to be desired. I will fully admit that. And we actually we did about 18 months of work on a sequel, which was going to be more of a sort of traditional point and click style graphic adventure, but in like a 3D world.
Okay.
And unfortunately, it ended up getting canceled. But yeah, that would have been. I kind of wish people had gotten an opportunity to play that one because I think it was more the type of game we wanted to make. And I think, we got a little flack from, the old school fans and from like, the Al Lowe fans. And I feel like our follow-up would have been, would have gotten that contingency on our side.
I don't remember a lot of my PlayStation 2 days, so. But I do know I had that game. Because, like I said, when I saw Leisure Suit Larry coming out, I had to get it.
Yeah.
Now, so how do you go from there to that we is just both wrestling fans, be talking about wrestling in the office, and then say, hey, I have this idea?
Well, Ed actually had so Ed's from Portland, and so he grew up like he's 7 years older than me. And so when he was a kid, it was sort of the territories era.
Yeah, and Portland wrestling was huge.
Yeah. And NWA obviously had a territory up there, and he actually had a Playboy Buddy Rose. I don't know if you remember Playboy.
Oh, yeah.
Rose. Yeah. So he had a big frame photo of autographed photo of Playboy Buddy Rose, and and like paperclip to that, he had a picture of himself with King Kong Bundy putting him in a headlock.
That's cool. That is cool.
I don't even know where Ed met King Kong Bundy. I don't know. Like it must have been some convention or, but yeah, that just sort of sparked a conversation, and like wrestling fans find each other, and it was just something we were aware of about each other, and so after we ended up both getting laid off in the same round of layoffs, and we kind of had a lot of time on our hands for a while, and Ed just sort of had this this concept. He's like, well, there's a planet and it's inhabited by pro wrestlers, and their entire sort of society is sort of built around pro wrestling, and they invade Earth and they put a steel cage around Earth so we can't escape. And that was basically all we had. But I was like, I feel like there's something there.
Now, I've been privy to issues 1 and 2, which are out now, correct?
Issue 1 is out, and issue 2 is coming out in 1 week. It'll be out next Wednesday on Comixology.
And issue 1 is on Comixology.
Yeah, issue 1 is already out.
Was part of the free comic book day Saturday. So
yes, you can if people want to get a free taste before they buy. Although it's only $1.99 for a 32-page comic, so it's not much.
I can tell you, I'm waiting for 3 and 4.
Thank you. Yeah, 3 is done, and 4 is almost done, and we're getting 5 kicked off now.
It's such a throwback. And have you guys been around independent wrestling at all?
Ed has more than I have.
Like in a backstage type of sense?
No. Like when we first wrote the screenplay, we read probably collectively about 50 books about wrestling.
Okay.
autobiographies, just a lot of behind the scenes stuff, because we really wanted sort of the, like Rory and his life sort of out of the ring to be as realistic a portrayal as possible.
You guys hit close on a lot of the old school stuff.
Yeah.
From every story, like I do a lot of independent shows around here. I'll go and help set up, do whatever's needed, and talk to a lot of the guys, and you guys hit pretty close on a lot of that stuff. That's why, like, I've been dying to ask you guys that, if you guys had been around it,
Like I don't know if you have read, I don't know if you ever read, I believe it was called Chokehold. It's a wrestling bio by his name was Jim Wilson. And it was really one of the first sort of like, pulling back the curtain and telling sort of like the dirty reality of wrestling.
I've seen that one. I have not actually read that.
Yeah. That was sort of like a foundational sort of, book for both of us. And then, of course, we kind of like drew up a list of all these autobiographies and other books we wanted to read about the history of the business. And we just sort of, divided and conquered and shared notes. And, we definitely wanted to use some of the slang, hoping we didn't, alienate people who don't, know some of the kayfabe slang.
What's kayfabe?
Kayfabe is the artifice of the,
I know. But it's...
Oh, I see what you did.
It's so yeah, and you just did it to a point where it was so minimal that someone would be able to figure out what it was if they didn't know. But I think at this point, the most of the language is so out there, like fans use it on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So there's just there was like the fight scenes in the bar and stuff like that. It's so well drawn out too on what you guys did.
Yeah, that's all. Like Dan Scotty is just great. Ed really is sort of like the fight choreographer, between the two of us. And then Dan Scotty is really good at sort of capturing the action.
I think to keep it real, the only thing you guys are missing is a couple of podcast hosts.
Well, there'll be some crowd scenes.
I just think the whole idea of it is, so the main character, Rory Landell, right?
Yeah.
He cuts a promo, and he didn't get the championship he wanted. The promoter kind of pulled it out from under him at the last minute, and he cuts this promo and just says, "I'm the champion of the galaxy."
Yeah.
And somebody who was watching over Earth from Wrestletopia saw this and took that as a challenge.
Yeah. And, of course, it takes 15 years for the satellite signal of the pay-per-view to travel across the universe. And so, when we catch up with Rory again, he's been sort of, dealing with some alcoholism. He's definitely softer around the middle. He's not kind of the prime specimen he was in his 20s.
So it's just such a fun read, and it really is a throwback to some of the old school comics. I haven't really read comics in a long time. I'll pick up a graphic novel here and there, but it's the Green Lantern type of intro in the beginning I loved, and it's just such a fun read. It's a throwback to old school pro wrestling. Like, it literally is a throwback to the 80s.
Yeah. And
now, who was your favorite wrestler growing up?
Mine, it's not a deep cut, but mine was Macho Man, and it pretty much still is. For me, he was like the total package. Surreal character, just cut brilliant bizarre promos, and he had sort of the in-ring skills to back it up.
Now, is there any character in the book that was sort of based on Macho Man?
Oddly, like, no, and it's I'm curious, like, who, like, because we get different responses to this. Who do you think Rory was based on? And it can be multiple wrestlers.
I couldn't tell. I didn't think. I saw his own, like, a character of its own, but the strong promo and everything, and the way he cut it, and just it's me was not so much Ultimate Warrior-like, but Ultimate Warrior-like, if that makes any sense to you.
Yeah.
It was kind of like, this is mine, and I'm taking it. But the off-scene stuff, like the alcoholism, I saw like Jake.
Yeah, that's so. Most people have picked up. Yeah, definitely. Like, out of the ring, Jake Roberts was a big influence. In fact, there's that sort of infamous match where he showed up like visibly intoxicated, and I think he grabs that woman out of the crowd and like has her like rub her hands over his chest. Like, it's really embarrassing. We didn't quite take it that far, but Jake was definitely sort of an influence for who he was, like, out of the ring. But his in-ring persona was very influenced by Superstar Billy Graham.
Okay.
Because we sort of saw him, like, because Superstar really was a guy who was maybe a little too ahead of his time. And that's how sort of Rory is, because Rory is a heel and an anti-hero in an era where, family friendly and baby faces sold. Yeah. And then, by the time, we catch up with him, it's the 90s, he's kind of aged out and he's missed his sort of shot at, the limelight at sort of, the big time. So Superstar was really, our primary influence. But look, like, anybody we sort of use as an influence, they're just sort of jumping off points. And as you kind of, spend time with the characters and write it, they just kind of become their own things.
That's so. Now, if it wasn't, if you basically just designed all the wrestling characters you would have designed, then it wasn't really like based on X or Y or Z.
It was it's been interesting. So we have a different artist for the next three, and so Dan Scotty, our first artist for the first three, not a wrestling fan, so there was a little more hand holding with him.
Okay.
And we just sort of said, hey, these 2 or 3 wrestlers are sort of the influence, and do what you want with it. Whereas Kendall Good will be taking over art duties for issues 3 through 6. And he actually has worked on Boom Comics WWE series. And we don't really have to explain all that much to him. We say, a character like Ravishing Rick Rude. And he kind of, knows where to go with that. He doesn't create a character that explicitly looks like Ravishing Rick Rude. But he gets kind of like the rude sort of, demeanor, like the whole ethos. And, is able to create a brand new character just with that inspiration.
So that takes a little bit off of you guys' plate then.
Yeah. And what I'm excited for people to see, especially with Kendall taking over on issue 4, is a lot of sort of the background Wrestletopians and some of these bigger fight scenes. We just kind of let him go wild, and he's doing a lot of like really interesting, like he like creates like distinctive characters and then just these big sort of battle royale scenes, and it's pretty exciting.
That sounds like it's just so that must make it a little more fun for you guys too then.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like Kendall's been great. It's it's good to work with. This is not, I feel like Dan, by the time we finished issue 3 with him, he said he got it. In fact, we just sent him a box full of like vintage wrestling magazines, and he definitely sort of got it. I don't think he'll ever be a fan, but he sort of understood what wrestling is all about. But Kendall, we don't have to do any selling with him. He's already a fan. He gets it, and I really been really happy, and I'm excited with what he's been sort of bringing to the project.
And it's one, like a lot of comic books, they have a separate artist for the covers and the inside. I like about you guys is it's been the same artist, so you're not like seeing one picture on the cover and that something completely different in the book. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we want, like the cover's like a real good, place for our artists to kind of shine, and we don't want to take that away from them.
Now, I know Comixology and like the digital platform for comics, but is there also hard copies of it out there?
So, at least right now, the current plan is to do the individual issues as digital only releases, each with some bonus content, and then after the 6-issue run to do a trade paperback.
Okay.
That collects them all, and that bonus content in the individual issues will not be in the trade paperback. We did do a limited print run actually for Rose City Comic Con. But in terms of the individual issues, that's it. I think we'll do 6 digital, and then we'll do a big collection.
I think the digital that's how people are reading nowadays anyway. Yeah. I mean, my mother, who is an older woman, obviously, doesn't read a book anymore. She reads her Kindle.
Yeah.
And that's just the way the world is. But I will definitely, I want a hard copy. I will definitely be grabbing that trade paperback.
Yeah, and we are going to do some bonus content just for the trade paperback. You got to give people incentives to buy the individual issues and the collection.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing is, like, you'll have stuff, they'll have something in each that they don't get in the other. So
yeah,
you kind of need both.
Yeah.
Now, you guys are, who's the publisher?
So we were self-publishing. We actually self-published the first 2 issues, and then back in September we signed with Starburns Industries Press, and people might recognize Starburns because it's Dan Harmon and Dino Stamatopoulos' production company. They do Community, Rick and Morty, Anomalia. So basically within the last year or so, they've been exclusively just, doing TV and film production. They decided they wanted to do a comic book imprint, sort of like a lab where they can test ideas, and sort of see if they have merit without, the millions of dollars of investment that, doing a TV pilot or, producing a film costs.
That's pretty cool. I mean, Rick and Morty is humongous.
Yeah. And what's funny is even though, this company's owned by the creator of Rick and Morty, they sold the comic book rights to Dark Horse. So they don't have so the Rick and Morty comic books, at least until that, IP, that deal, runs its course, will not be on the Starburns, label.
Well, yeah, that is kind of, but it probably made sense to them at the time, but.
Yeah. But Dan Harmon, who's the writer / showrunner on Rick and Morty. He actually did a comic called Gregory Graves, which was one of Starburns' first, releases. So, they've been really great to work with. They get the comic, they get us. They give us a lot of sort of creative freedom.
So, I mean, is there an opportunity for something like TV to come out of it?
That's what we're hoping, because that's kind of why they set this whole label up. They're like, this is what we are we are publishing stuff that we would like to see maybe produced as movies, as TV shows, as video games, whatever. Like we're specifically, purchasing intellectual properties that we feel, will be, able to, thrive in other mediums.
Because you're like, when you originally saw it as a screenplay in a movie, was it going to be live action or was it going to be a cartoon?
So it was going to be live action, and then we ended up doing a pitch that I think we sent to one agent, where like we pitched it as an Adult Swim cartoon.
That's kind of the way I see, to do it as live action, to have some of the aliens from Wrestletopia would be a problem. Like there'd be a ton of CGI.
Yeah, that's like it's like a very sort of B-movie concept, and I just think like the budget required to do this live action, I don't think you'd recoup that investment, because it's very much sort of like a midnight movie kind of concept. It's not like Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's not a popcorn movie for the masses.
Well, yeah. No, you're definitely right, and I don't want to say that in an insulting way, but it's your average movie person isn't a wrestling, like The Wrestler did good numbers, but it was Mickey Rourke. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it was also an indie movie, with an indie movie budget, and what we have here, you struggle to do an indie movie budget.
Right, and but I think the Adult Swim type of cartoon, I think you would do big numbers and convert people that aren't necessarily wrestling fans.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, we've sent this around a lot, and we've been real happy that, the wrestling fans out there, it seems to be connecting with them. It's sort of passed the smell test with the actual wrestling fans, but we've had a lot of reviews from people who are pretty clear, at the start of the review, that they are not wrestling fans. But they like the comic anyway. It was able to sort of, for them, succeed on its own merits, and it's not like a requirement that you be a wrestling fan to sort of enjoy the series.
You know what I see? Thinking about it, I see you guys doing a crossover with Muscle. Remember the Muscle action figures? They weren't really action figures. They were the little dolls, pretty much, rubber dolls.
It was so funny, because after we wrote the first draft of the screenplay, somebody mentioned to me, the muscle, the whole concept behind that were they were alien wrestlers.
Yeah.
And we didn't take it as far, because they had those bizarre, alien character design where all our Wrestletopians are all humanoid. They look like people, but they have weird color skin. But yeah, and that was I've actually watched a few episodes since then, because that was a cartoon series in Japan.
I think we had it here for maybe not for long.
Yeah.
Or maybe I saw it on YouTube or something, but
that's where I saw it, and it was interesting because they were skirting the line of intellectual property.
Oh yeah, they were.
Violation, because they clearly had a Terry Funk character and a Ric Flair character, and
they definitely did. But it was, I just think for what you guys are doing, I think something like that, and that's just my mind being my mind. It's not normal. I tell people that all the time. I'm a 45-year-old wrestling fan with a podcast.
Kinnikuman, that's what it was called.
Okay. That was the name of the cartoon?
Yeah.
And then Muscle was an acronym, I don't know what it stood for, but...
Yeah, Muscle, they called it Muscle when they came out with the toy line. And it was just weird because, they didn't, bother connect... I had those as a kid. I, collected those obsessively. But they didn't really, try to capitalize on it by, doing, a good dub of the cartoon that was associated with it.
Do you think that some of those, did any of the, I know the comics drawn by someone else, but did some of those have anything to do with like the characters that you saw in your head as you were writing it?
I don't. It's funny. I didn't really. I feel like had we embraced that style, we would have gone a little more out there with some of the alien wrestler designs. Yeah, as I said, like we had kind of like a lot of like the parts were already sort of set in stone before I even somebody, I don't even remember, it was like a friend, and he brought up the fact that like the muscle figures were alien wrestlers. Now, the concept behind the cartoon is not really the same as ours.
Right. No. I was just talking like as far as the style, you know what I mean?
Yeah. We let sort of Dan Scotty kind of do his thing when it came to the style. If you look at his other work, like it has a similar sort of look to it. And Kendall, his stuff is not like, he's definitely like got a different style, but it's not so far off that if you go from issue 3 to issue 4, it's going to be totally jarring.
Right. Still be recognizable.
Yeah. We kind of did a test run where we let him do some bonus content for issue 3, and we got to see his versions of what all of the characters that Dan had designed looked like. And after getting that from him, we were like, oh, totally, like this is our guy for the remainder of the run.
Now, when you were doing it as a screenplay, who did you see as Rory Landell?
Oh God, we didn't even get that far.
Weren't that far in the dark?
In casting, and it's been interesting because like the first editions, like the first version of that screenplay, Don was white.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Don was white in the original. Yeah, the cast got a lot more diverse as we sort of developed it.
Okay.
Linda was, Linda, I don't know if you could tell, but she's supposed to be like Mexican American, and she was white as well, and her like gimmick was Mississippi Queen as opposed to Spanish Rose, which is her gimmick in the comic.
Now, with Don White, was his gimmick completely different as well?
Yeah, because
that could have been really funny.
Yeah, so his character like was originally called Buddy, but like our inspiration throughout was always Freddie Blassie.
Okay.
Just so like as a person, because I don't know if you've read Freddie Blassie's autobiography. But it's a good one.
I read that one a while back.
Yeah. But he's got this kind of like really sort of gruff, unromantic kind of shoot from the hip style. And we kind of needed a guy like that to kind of, pick apart Rory and kind of, deflate his ego when it was necessary and just kind of, give it to him straight.
Yeah.
So, he became Hawaiian, but he was still like in essence like a Freddie Blassie type character. And then of course his gimmick changed to, this weird mashup of like Mr. Fuji and then Ernie Roth, the Grand Wizard.
That I'm stuck being he was stuck being a Chinaman.
Yeah.
As a Hawaiian.
Which was like
the bitterness towards that because that happens.
Yeah, like
I'll say
Yokozuna was a Hawaiian.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I know a few Puerto Ricans who are Samoans.
Yeah, and actually Mr. Fuji, while he was like Japanese American, he was born in Hawaii. Right. He was Hawaiian.
Yeah,
like that accent was a put on.
I appreciated that a lot.
Yeah.
And that's the little stuff that was in there. So when you guys were writing the screenplay, you never said, imagine if this person played him?
No, and it's been interesting because like we've had people like, oh, if this turn, Bruce Campbell, we've heard Matthew McConaughey, we've heard for Rory. we've had some interesting suggestions since like we premiered the comic, but yeah, we really thought of the wrestlers that inspired them, and kind of like we sort of heard all their lines and sort of their voices as opposed to any specific actor. So, like I heard Superstar when we were writing Roy's dialogue, and I definitely heard Freddie Blassie when we were writing Don.
That's all I'm going to hear now when I read it. That's okay. See, I always, I've never written, I've barely written a sentence, never mind a comic book or a screenplay. But, like, I always imagined that the person writing it would say, oh, this is going to be this person. And that might change 100 times from step 1 to step 10, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I like getting in your mind a little on that.
Yeah, you got to sort of, like, as a writer, when you're writing dialogue, you got to be able to hear a voice in your head.
Now, did you go to school for video games, or did you go to school for writing?
So, both Ed and I sort of had weird, circuitous paths into video games. So I went to art school at Syracuse University to be a computer animator. So, sort of video games. I wanted to be an environmental designer in games. And I made this little point-and-click graphic adventure with a friend of mine who was a programmer in college. And it had, the humor in it was really sort of crude and crass and not far off from Leisure Suit Larry. So when I applied to a job at High Voltage Software, which was my first job in the industry, they said, we want to bring you on board, but we want you to be a writer because we really like that little game you made.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, sure. I don't really have much training as a writer, but basically Ed and I, every week we had to produce about 3 scenes worth of content and then read them to a room of about 6 to 8 people, all of our seniors. These are like all the directors on the project, and since it was Leisure Suit Larry, we had to make them laugh. So it was really trial by fire, and if stuff isn't connecting, if people aren't laughing, it's not working, and it's kind of hard to dispute that. So you sort of develop a thick shell pretty quickly in that sort of scenario.
Okay. Now I got to take a few seconds just to tell my fans about something else, and then after that, I want to spend the next 15, 20 minutes or so just talking about the comic books and what might be coming. But guys, you're listening to a podcast now and you're not getting anything out of it. If you download the app Podcoin, you can use promo code IrishWhip. We're going to give you 300 bonus points for that, and you get coins for listening to any podcast. Your favorite podcasts are all on there, including us, obviously. You go on, you just download it, you listen to your podcast there, and then you can trade those points in for gift cards to places like Starbucks and stuff like that. So download the app Podcoin, use the promo code IrishWhip. We'll give you a couple extra points, and you'll be on a nice start onto your first gift card. Now, Matt, I really want to get into the comics, and I don't want to tell people the whole storylines, obviously, because we want people to have to buy them.
Yeah.
One is out there, so people should know what's going on in one. And one sort of left, I don't want to say it was a cliffhanger, but the action is just about to start when one ended.
Yeah, well, we introduced the major sort of antagonist of the series. We can get into some of the broad outlines of the story because these have been out for a while. But yeah, I mean, in fact, you see that character on the cover, so it's not a huge surprise. You just at the end of that issue, you know who that is and what's about to what Rory has unleashed with his kind of rather unfortunate promo that he cut way back in 1984.
That's and It was a 1984 promo for sure.
Yeah. A lot of daddies.
Right in. Yeah. And now,
use the word jive.
But that was a thing then, so it worked. And that was the stuff I mean. It was really like a throwback there. So now, you know the aliens. I don't know. Do you call them aliens? Do you call them creatures?
We call them aliens. But yeah, so we introduce actually in the first scene, we do that little preview where you see Crater Maker, who actually never reappears, but that's your first glimpse of what Wrestletopians are like.
And that's
and then at the end we introduce Manifest Destiny and his sort of right-hand man, Adrian Polaris, who everyone thinks is supposed to be Adrian Adonis, but actually was influenced by Adrian Street.
A little bit different.
Yeah.
So okay. I see that now.
Yeah, he's very glam rock. Just like exotic Adrian Street was.
And I mean, you already hit on it earlier. They're gonna come down and they're gonna build a steel cage.
Yeah,
that was a very WrestleMania 2-ish steel cage.
It's also because they like vastly underestimate human technology, and they think that in the year 1999 we could like escape our planet. We had space travel capability to basically take our entire Earth population and leave if it got too hot on Earth.
So they're coming down, and their main thing is obviously Rory Landell, right?
Yeah. So when we catch up 15 years later, after the signal has sort of been blasted across the universe and picked up by the Wrestletopians, Rory is sort of working high school gyms and bingo halls and Native American casinos, and he's pretty washed up. Basically, this happens in issue 2. So much of this is known. I don't feel like we're ruining too much. But Manifest Destiny basically throws down the gauntlet, and he wants Rory to meet him in St. Paul, Minnesota, in order for a belt unification match.
That was the other thing too. In the first book, the wrestling bear being the best worker that was in the promotion.
It's funny, like that's the one thing people remember that bear, and he's only in there for, I don't know, 2-3 pages. People love that damn bear.
Well, it was funny because at one point the bear sits down, so the promoter's there yelling, "He's tired, you'll get him," and the bear would just swat him away again.
That was definitely inspired by Terrible Ted, who was the bear that Stampede Wrestling up in Calgary used.
Very familiar with Terrible Ted.
And all the people who are wrestling fans recognize that, in fact, like bears did wrestle with people. And all the people who don't know anything about wrestling think like this is something we invented just like as a joke.
No, I think Moolah actually wrestled a bear at one point.
And Roddy Piper did.
Yeah. Piper was probably like the newest wrestler.
Yeah.
Because it hasn't been done in so long. But that's like that was very cool because that was definitely an 80s thing, and it was fun. The beer was definitely memorable.
Yeah, we kind of used it to say that, like, the AWF hasn't quite turned that corner, right? They're still kind of regional. They're still kind of small time. They're on the cusp of something, but, they're still doing gimmick matches with bears.
Yeah. But they had a bear. That's a plus. A lot of,
Yeah.
Now, Where do you see it going from here now that you're out with the comic books? What are your goals with the comic?
So, we want to just finish up this first run of 6 issues, and this is really going to be a self-contained story. It's going to have like a clear beginning, middle, and end. But, if this finds an audience, fingers crossed, what we would love to do is potentially just do a series called Wrestletopia that takes place on Wrestletopia, where we kind of sort of dig deeper into Wrestletopian society. For me and for Ed, we feel like it's just sort of like there's sort of endless possibilities in terms of sort of expanding the universe. There's just a lot of different characters we can create and a lot of sort of stories we can tell within the kind of, the confines of the Wrestletopian universe.
Well, have you guys thought about hitting up some of the independent wrestling promotions on doing like cross stuff? I don't know if you're familiar with Chikara.
Yeah, I do. We haven't talked about doing any specific crossovers where we get some of these guys involved, but like that would definitely be fun. I know we've tweeted a little back and forth with, speaking of Chikara, with Mike Quackenbush.
Yeah.
I don't know, like Ed's really kind of like he's like our Twitter presence. Like he's the one doing a lot of outreach, but like right now it's more like just trying to like get retweets and like get wrestling fans knowledgeable and excited about this series. The only people I know who have retweeted it thus far have been Stevie Richards. He gave us a retweet, and actually Jerry Lawler did as well.
Now, have you guys thought about reaching out? Because he does
a
lot of art.
Yeah, I would love, and we'll see once we get around to doing a trade paperback. I would love for Lawler to do some art for the book. Actually, my wife and I went to Memphis for a weekend last year, and this was sort of after he retweeted us, and I went to his bar on Beale Street, and he wasn't there, but his buddy who manages the place was there, and he like brought me into sort of the VIP room, and I got to see the walls are covered in Lawler's original art, and Lawler's legit talented.
Yeah. He did
fan back in the day.
He did the drawings for all of Mick Foley's children's books.
Yeah, and he also,
or for at least for one or two of them, I should say.
Yeah, and he did like when he was still wrestling in Memphis, he did the cover art for a lot of the programs.
Yeah,
and you can see that stuff actually, at his bar. He has a lot of that stuff.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. We just, I signed some issues and left them for him. But yeah, I'd love to reach out to him to see if maybe he wants to do some art for the trade. There's a lot, there's a lot of these guys who are comic book fans as well. Obviously, Rob Van Dam, also big he used to have a comic shop.
Yeah, there is a ton of them in pro wrestling.
Shane Helms,
Yeah.
There's a lot of crossover. And we'll see. Yeah, I would love to get some like legit actual wrestlers to make guest appearances. But first things first, we got to get this first run out, 6, and then we can start, getting ambitious with it.
Yeah, and that's you get it right. You got to kind of get the first couple out there, and then you'd be surprised at who would do it as a favor when you get something really cool out there.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure Shane Helms would love to be in an actual comic book.
Yeah. And there's actually like a series. For some reason, I'm always blank on it. But it's crowdfunded, and he gets the actual wrestlers to write stories for, and he's had Lawler do some artwork for him.
Really?
Yeah, and I know he goes to a lot of indie shows. He goes to a lot of wrestling conventions. But yeah, there's a lot of crossover there that is just ripe for for us to kind of seize on here.
Have you guys thought about doing that, like the conventions?
Headlock Comics, just so I get this, help promote our brothers in the trade. We have thought about it. It would definitely be something we would do after we had the trade out,
Okay.
Because right now, beyond like this limited run we did for
it's hard to sell digital media at a table.
Yeah. But
I mean, you guys got a really good product. It's
well, thank you.
Like I said, I've been privy to the first two, and I'm waiting on issue 3.
Well, we'll be sure to get you a copy before it gets it gets released.
I was gonna say I'll probably have it before then because I'll be buying it once it gets put out.
Yeah.
And I've never been one to read comics digitally. I haven't collected comics in years, but if someone tells me there's a good story, like I was buying the Walking Dead trade paperbacks for a while, and I brought up Blackest Night to you, the Green Lantern story arc, because just your intro on that first page sort of reminded me of that.
Yeah.
And it that's literally probably my favorite story arc of all time in comics. So to have me start there, it was a good place.
Well, thank you. Yeah. We felt very fortunate that people have thus far been responding to it the way they have, and it's we've been working on this sort of on and off for about over a decade now. And it's definitely sort of a labor of love for us. And now we're just sort of excited that, we're able to get it out to people and, just see how they respond to, this little thing.
Where can people go to get news on Wrestletopia and like the Twitters and the Facebooks?
So we are all over the place. We're basically on everything. We're on Twitter at SBP_comics. We're on Tumblr at Suspicious Behavior Productions. We're also on Facebook and Instagram, although we really, we started on Instagram and we have no idea what the hell to do with it.
Yeah, I'm the same way. It took me so long to switch from MySpace to Facebook and from Facebook to Twitter. I'm not at Instagram yet.
Yeah. And we do a little bit on Facebook, but really I'd say like Twitter and Tumblr have been our sort of primary modes of communication. We'll probably be doing Tumblr's been good since it's so like image heavy. Like we'll probably be doing a preview of issue 3 in the next, I don't know, week or so.
I guess I need to set up a Tumblr.
Yeah, Tumblr is. I'm not a big fan of the social medias, but Tumblr's kind of the social media for people who are antisocial.
Okay.
Because it's really, like you don't get involved in heated discussions, really. It's people just kind of like post pictures and videos of their personal fandom.
Now, where can people buy the issue 1 and issue 2 when it comes out next week? Comixology.
So yeah, Comixology we're exclusive right now to Comixology.
Okay. I feel like that's the go-to anyway for digital comics.
Yeah, it really is. When we were independently publishing, we're also existed on Amazon and on Apple, on iBooks. But really, when people Yeah, but like when people buy digital comics, they buy it on Comixology.
Yeah.
So all you have to do is punch in Invasion from Planet Wrestletopia, and you'll be able to find us real quickly. And we are in the Starburn storefront as well.
Okay, so people can go right to the website and.
Yeah, Starburns has a lot of cool, exciting things coming out. They have Nasquatch, they have Griffin, they have B Squad.
I'm gonna have to pick up Griffin just for the name because my last name is Griffin.
Yeah.
With all eyes, but it's all a spin-off of the same thing. I got excited when I saw that in the emails we were trading back and forth.
Yeah, and in fact, I think they did 11 pages of Griffin in Starburns Presents #2, and you can download that now for free and get a taste, see if you like it.
I think I'm going to do that. I'm going to print it out, and then I'm going to autograph it. Because if it's my name, I can autograph it myself, right?
Yeah.
I think that's how it works anyway. But, Matt, I thank you. I appreciate you coming on, and I appreciate the comic book more, though.
Well, I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, anytime, and we'll be retweeting. You can follow their Twitter, obviously, but when that issue 2 comes out, we'll definitely be tweeting about it on the Three Irish Boys. And when issue 3, 4, 5, and 6 come out, we'll be tweeting about it and doing reviews of it and talking about it because it's just it was an incredible book. It took me back to a different age, and I appreciated that. I loved it.
Well, thank you, and I will pass the compliments on to Ed.
Yeah, definitely. I appreciate all the communication with you guys that we've had. So, Matt, anytime you guys want to come on, you guys are more than welcome to pitch anything you guys got going on.
We would love to come back. You just let us know.
Yeah, absolutely. We got the emails going, so.
Yeah.
Guys, that's all we got for tonight. Thank you for listening, Matt. Thank you for coming on. We'll be back next week.
Bye.
All right. I'll talk to you later, Matt. Thank you, buddy.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.